everybody. Hey, I'm Robert Wasman with JRev Media, and you're watching the second episode of Cannacation. This is a show that focuses on the normalization through education. You can expect us to discuss politics, research, and the future of cannabis as a whole. And this episode is called, Is Medical Cannabis Being Suppressed? So, in the last episode, we discussed, how you have to fight through the myths and disinformation. And today we're going to be discussing medical cannabis and what we do know and what we don't know. We have heard the most optimistic rhetoric as if it is, a cure-all for everything, which, in my opinion, is a little snake oil salesman kind of style. But we've also heard the most negative rhetoric that cannabis kills and it's addicting, and that spits in the face of pretty much all the research that we have so far. And in this episode, we're going to discuss hit pieces that mainstream media put out, and we're going to deconstruct them. And today, I have Lukas Barfield he's the director of the Medical Marijuana Coalition of Washington. Lukas, are you there?
Yes.
How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, just living the dream, and trying to, dispel some myths and deconstruct some bad publicity, if you will. So tell me a little bit about the Medical Coalition, the Medical Marijuana Coalition of Washington. What is it that you guys do exactly?
Yes, the MMCWS is just a small nonprofit. It was started by myself and actually my wife's uncle. And a couple years ago, when the state of Washington was going to reform medical cannabis, we really saw some things coming down the line. And matter of fact, it kind of speaks to what you're talking about today, some sort of hit pieces coming through the media. And we really started to see what was going to be happening to medical cannabis in Washington, and we knew what was coming. We knew they were going to sort of smash the whole system and do away with a lot of different things. So we decided to start this nonprofit, and since then we've been lobbying Olympia. We've had a couple of educational initiatives going on. We helped last year to pass a clone bill, and right now we're just out there educating people and getting the word out about medical cannabis.
A perfect example of these seeds of doubt being seeded is this article I actually want to discuss with you from today.com. The headline reads, "Family believes marijuana killed their healthy son." So I want to take a moment and just read over some of the blurbs from this article. Michael's Zyobro was just 22 when his mother, Christina, found him unconscious on his bedroom floor. They said that they found medical-grade marijuana in Michael's room, and a medical examiner found evidence of cannabis in his blood. Christina and her husband are convinced that and I quote, highly addictive marijuana caused Michael's heart to go into arrhythmia and killed him. But the medical examiner says he cannot say for sure whether cannabis was involved in Michael's sudden death, and notes that there is little evidence about what marijuana does or does not do to the heart. States are moving ahead with decriminalization or outright legalization, not just of medical use of marijuana, but recreational use. And medical marijuana is now legal in 28 states, and also Washington, D.C. And it's still illegal under federal law, and about 10% of U.S. adults consider themselves current users of marijuana. I would say at least 44% what does it say here? At least 44% of high school seniors say that they have tried cannabis, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and 6% say they use it daily. Advocates laud that what they see as an excellent safety profile for marijuana, brushing aside the medical research that indicates that it does have its dangers, especially in adolescents and adults. The Zybros say that their son, Michael, was among those hurt by cannabis, even though they thought it was perfectly safe. He was such an advocate, Christina says. He thought it was wonderful. He thought it was safe. He thought it was natural and organic, and it ended up killing him. However, Dr. Michael Botswick, a psychiatrist at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, says that people who like the effects of marijuana may indeed find benefits using from it. There's plenty of reason to think that marijuana has therapeutic uses. Cells all over the body have receptors, a kind of biological doorway for many of the active ingredients in cannabis. But they also know that the younger you are, the greater the possibility for becoming addicted. Now, I want to stop there because there's a lot to deconstruct in what was just said there. So let's start at the beginning, where they said they found medical grade marijuana, right? I don't know about you, Lucas, but I mean, for me, I don't find too much of a difference between what people call medical grade, except in the CBD count, and what is considered recreational. Do you think that using the term medical grade in this article was more of a scare tactic than trying to tell us the truth?
Yes, I think so. They like to use the term medical grade. I think they try to use that to make it sound like the cannabis was somehow better or stronger. Usually, medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, as far as the flower go, they're the exact same thing. Now, there may be a little more rigor as far as the growing goes, as far as pesticides and things they put on there, because medical patients are a little more sensitive to certain things. But as far as the actual products, everything's pretty much the same. The difference is it just depends on the usage of the product. For instance, usually recreational cannabis users wouldn't want to use, they don't use topicals a lot. Or recreational cannabis person would not use a suppository, or they wouldn't use a patch. So there are differences in medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, but for the most part, they are the exact same thing.
Well, at least the beginning of those products comes from pretty much the same flower, right?
Yes.
But one of the other things that they say is that there's little evidence about what marijuana does or doesn't do to the heart. We were actually discussing this before the show. That's not entirely true. There's been a few pieces of research that have come out talking about heart rates. And what was the one that you were discussing in particular? Do you remember?
Yes, I don't know the exact place where I got it from, but right now I'm preparing to do a presentation to a senior center up in Seattle. So one of the questions they wanted to know was some of the dangers of medical cannabis. And of course, these folks being seniors, I really wanted to pay attention because their systems sometimes are a little more sensitive than other people. So I made sure that I was doing the research. And I did find a study that said that cannabis could affect the heart just a little more than sex. So it's not a lot. So if this young man perhaps had already like a heart murmur or some type of heart condition, then cannabis could have perhaps contributed to his death, but no more than if he would have like had a good night with his girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it was. So it's not a really terrible risk as they portray it out to be.
With medical marijuana, it seems like we are having a suppression take place. And, you know, I don't want to dive into the realm of conspiracy, but I mean, let's follow the money, right? There's talks of, cannabis pieces, organic chemicals in cannabis taking over anti-anxiety medicine. There's talks of it taking over the medicine that they use for PTSD. There's talks of it now. I even read a study here recently where they say that marijuana is quickly becoming the #1 painkiller of choice in the United States. Now, when we think about that, the pharmaceutical industry in the United States is a $2.6 billion industry. And if you take away their anti-anxiety meds and their painkillers, you took out a huge chunk of their revenue. In your personal opinion, do you think that's what's driving this suppression of medical cannabis as a whole?
I think it could have a lot to do with it. Something I learned not too long ago in a book I was reading about the California uprising in medical marijuana is the first people to attack medical marijuana was the aspirin industry, specifically Bayer. And that is because cannabis became, in the early 1900s, that's because cannabis was used for a lot of the things that aspirin was used for. So they isolated aspirin from the bark of a tree, and then some type of aspen tree, I believe, and then they made aspirin. And then they attacked cannabis so that people wouldn't take cannabis anymore. They wanted to buy aspirin. So the first attack on marijuana was from the pharmaceutical industry, and they succeeded in their mission to pretty much eradicate medical cannabis up until 1996 when California passed the first medical marijuana law in the United States. So this is something that's been around for quite a long time, and they have to be running scared because the word is out. Everybody is starting to find out. The internet is sharing. They know family, they have friends that are using medical cannabis. And so the word's getting out. So let's go back to your piece there. you can almost just tell by the headline and the terminology used in that piece that they are trying to scare people. And when you see that terminology that is so direct and scary like that, you almost have to think that those things are coming straight from the pharmaceutical industry just to scare people so that people will keep using their products.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. And then again, like I said, I'm not trying to go into conspiracy theory here, but when you follow the money, you tend to find the root cause of issues. I mean,
Right.
today.com is also affiliated with USA Today. It's a TV show, which
Yeah.
means that they have sponsors. And the number one commercial sponsor in the country right now, pharmaceuticals.
There you go.
And then it also brings up another story that happened, I believe, right before the elections, where one of the daughters of the owners of, what was it, Walmart or Publix? I can't remember exactly which one it was. But one of the owners, she spent or donated, I think it was like $80,000 of her own money to fight medical cannabis in the state of Florida.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she spent a lot of it to do that, and she succeeded that round, right? But now, luckily, it went through. But again, if you follow the money, if even if it was Walmart or Publix, the point is they have pharmacies inside their store, and which
Yeah.
would be a huge revenue hit if people stopped getting those pharmaceuticals from their store. And at least so far in every state that I know that has medical and recreational, at this point is commercial stores are still not allowed to sell it. And it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, even what was the big one here? One of those club card type shopping centers tried to
Yeah.
get a recreational shop here in the state of Washington, and luckily that failed too. Because, I mean, in my personal opinion, I don't want that kind of money in our industry.
Right. Yeah. It could get a little overwhelming, and the big the big players could come up and buy up all the mom and pops and then sort of monopolize the industry. And then we see this with all industries all over the country. Then once that happens, they can start to use and abuse, and who knows what will happen. So I'm totally with you. We want to try to keep the big money influence out of the cannabis industry right now.
Yeah, and that's the main issue is you follow the money and you see the roots of the problems. This one particular set of research that I really enjoyed was reading about people with chronic migraines, people with fibromyalgia, and people with Crohn's disease all exhibit a lack of a hormone called amylin. Now, amylin and THCA are almost molecularly identical, and they found when taking small doses of THCA orally, which doesn't even get you high, right, reduces the amount of tax for all three of those conditions. As someone who suffers from constant migraines, my whole life, I've only, ever since I started a regimen of THCA where I either eat raw flour that, I basically put into like a smoothie,
Yeah.
that doesn't get me high, or I'll buy like THCA distillate and eat small dosages of it. I've had 2 migraines in almost 3 years,
Right.
which I was having 2 migraines a month up until that point. And then that's not something you can quantify. Someone could call me a faker easily with that. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
one, I'm not getting high, and then like two, I'm trying to prevent a condition instead of treat one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I could see how, to the uninitiated, if you will, they would assume I was a faker if I was walking in and out of a store like that.
Yeah, and it's somebody too commented, maybe you think they're faking because maybe the cannabis is just working so well. I mean, you can't see that they have a problem because the cannabis is helping them out so much. And so that's one of the big ones. Of course, the other one is that cannabis makes you stupid and dumb and you lose your IQ and all that. And there's no research that shows any of that is true. So that's another big thing. It's just getting over the stereotypes. The Cheech and Chong. I love Cheech and Chong, but all those old stereotypes, potheads and stoners and all that.
Yeah, we kind of did it to ourselves in the beginning.
That's totally fine. I have my hair grown out long, and I don't mind being a pothead.
So tell everybody where they can, find you, find the Medical Marijuana Coalition of Washington, and where they can see what you're doing and how they can support you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about the MMCWS just for a second. You can find us on Facebook with the extension at MJ or after the slash MJ is medicine, or just search the Medical Marijuana Coalition of Washington State. You can also find me on Twitter at MJ is medicine as well, and um, and I do a lot of talking about medical cannabis and other things. You can also hashtag blind guy doing stuff, so you can find out about stuff like that about me that way too.
That's awesome, man. And what's in the future for you guys?
Well, right now, like I said, I got a good. We're going to be doing a presentation at the Wallingford Senior Center on November 28th to some seniors. I'm really excited about that, sort of getting the word out to some seniors. And we are also right now trying to get a resolution right now through the Democratic Party, but we will be working with other organizations to try to get the governor to expunge cannabis records before he leaves office. So that's something matter of fact, I'm going to the 25th LD meeting tonight to talk about that. So we are trying to do that, and that's our big push right now. And then just finishing up the year strong, trying to get some things done, waiting for the next legislative session.
But you guys hear that? Make sure you're down there tonight to show your support for them. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming out here, man. Lucas, I'm glad that we got to talk about this, and I look forward to seeing what you guys accomplish in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, and take care.
Yep, you have a great day. So that was Lucas Barfield. This was Lucas Barfield of the Director of Medical Marijuana Coalition of Washington. And they're doing great things. Like he said, he's going to be down there trying to convince the governor to purge all the medical records, which would be freaking phenomenal. Let's just be honest. I mean, between the fact that they don't let you own a gun if you have a medical license, or you can't buy one, I mean, guess you can have the one you have. And to the point of, it's on a federal record. Why would you want to be on a list for something that's a federal crime? That's beyond me. But for now, let's move to the news. We actually already talked about the first article I was going to talk about Lucas. So I'm going to move on to my second one. This one is actually from the Business Insider. And the headline reads as, "Little evidence shows cannabis helps chronic pain or PTSD." Even though pain and post-traumatic stress disorder are among some of the most common reasons people use medical marijuana, there isn't much proof cannabis works for either of these conditions, two research reviews suggest. So first off, I want to unpack that and let you know that a research review is not actual research. But that's because there hasn't been enough high-quality research to produce conclusive evidence of the benefits or harms of cannabis on pain or PTSD, the two studies found. Both studies were conducted by a team of researchers at the Veterans Health Administration and published in the Annals of Internal Medicine. And I quote from Dr. Sachin Patel, "The current studies highlight the real and urgent need for high-quality clinical trials in both of these areas." This was a psychiatry researcher at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. So if cannabis is being used for medical use, it should certainly be after a well-established treatments have failed, according to Patel said by email. If cannabis is being considered for medical use, I already said that. 1 in 10 U.S. adults use cannabis, the researchers note. Medical cannabis is legal in 28 states and the District of Columbia, even though it is illegal under federal law. Between 45% and 85% of people seeking medical marijuana in the U.S. do so for pain management, according to researchers. When they examined 27 previously published studies on this topic, they found too little information to determine whether the drug helps most types of pain. Now, both studies were commissioned and funded by the Veterans Health Administration. Kurt Kasher, the press secretary for the Department of Veteran Affairs, declined to make the lead study authors available for comment on their research. So basically they couldn't, find out any information. But if you listen to the last show, you'll know that the VA, the people who are doing this studying, are hurting for people to study on. They're actually are running out of it, and the VA refuses to help. And they say it's because the fact that marijuana is still illegal on the federal level. And so David Schulke, the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, says that there may be some evidence that this is beginning to be helpful. So even though you have groups like 22 Many and a whole bunch of other veteran ran organizations that are trying to, get cannabis as one of the treatments for PTSD on the VA's list of treatments, even though we have hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of veterans that are using this, they can't seem to find enough veterans to do the study. Now, it is possible one of the cannabinoids or groups of molecules in a cannabis plant may be responsible for both the high experience by recreational users and the pain relief in some studies, says Dr. Weinfeld Hauser, a pain specialist of the Klinikum Saarbrücken in Germany, who wasn't involved in the current studies. It's possible that the THC cannabinoid affects regions of the brain involved in regulating pain, emotion, stress, and memory, Harsha said by email. Even though cannabis is legal for medical use in Germany, Harsha says many doctors hesitate to prescribe it because there aren't well-defined recommended doses available. Vaporizers are difficult for many patients, and cannabis smoked in combination with tobacco can have dangerous side effects, he says. Basically, he says medical cannabis is no magic pill. So let me stop there and talk about this. All right. So they say that THC regulates, pain, emotion, stress, and memory. And even though that they are finding that, that THC helps, they're worried about dosages. Now, this is a legitimate concern. This is something as a bud tender I was often asked about, and I never had a very specific answer. And I don't think that it would behoove us to try to say that there is one or to ignore that this is an actual issue. This is an issue. I mean, if a first-time user comes in and they're talking about wanting to get rid of their pain, but they have never smoked marijuana before in their life, do I want to have them smoke it? Or should I give them an edible at 10 milligrams? But I've also given 10 milligrams to a first-time user, and that was way too much. And they had to half it or quarter that dose. And then you got to talk into potency. Are they looking for CBD? Like, do they even want to get high? Should they be using a patch? The way that the dosaging works is so basis on the individual that it's almost impossible for us to give you one. So, I mean, just like all things like drinking alcohol or coffee or anything else that you do for a specific result, moderation is key. You can always take more. You can't take less. I would rather a first-time user smoke a hit and receive no benefit from it whatsoever, and then have to double up the next time than smoke an entire joint and they get green sick or they get paranoid or they hate the experience so much that they're not paying attention to the effects that it is helping with. So these are things that I think that as cannabis users, we need to be honest about. We need to be honest that, yes, you're right, we don't have a dosage available. But the fact of the matter is that these chemicals help us in a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of research to help back that up. Moving on to the next article. This one is from Forbes. Why marijuana compounds could eventually replace anti-anxiety meds. So we actually talked about this slightly with Lukas. The research into the potential medical uses of marijuana compounds continues to apace. Among the most recent, a study delved into why marijuana is an effective stress reliever. While not conclusive on their own, the results contribute to the longer-term possibilities that marijuana compounds may turn out to be more effective and safer in alleviating anxiety than prescription anxiety meds. Now, I think we discussed this partly on the last show where I said that I was kind of taken aback that sativas with high THC to help anxiety or help schizophrenia, which was counterintuitive to me because if I smoke too high of a sativa, I can really freak out. But to continue on with the article, the recent study focused on marijuana's potency in reducing the stress responses in regular users. Stress was measured by tracking cortisol amounts in the study participants' saliva. Cortisol is the stress hormone. It's a reliable indicator of stress. The higher or lower amounts correlate closely with a person's response to stressful situations. The study compared the stress responses of a group of daily marijuana users to a group of non-users. The results were consistent. Regular users had a blunted response to acute stress. Excuse me. In effect, their internal stress engines have been tuned down by regular exposure to marijuana. Carrie Cutler said, "To the best of our knowledge, this is the first study to examine the effects of acute stress on a salivary cortisol levels in chronic cannabis users compared to non-users." She was also the co-author and clinical assistant professor of psychology for the study. While we are not at a point where we are comfortable saying whether this muted stress response is a good thing or a bad thing, our work is an important first step to investigating the potential therapeutic benefits of cannabis at a time when its use is spreading faster than ever before. The comment that this result is too preliminary to be called a good or bad thing is well taken. Tuning down the stress response too much is likely to have both negative and positive effects, but it does not point to the potential for harnessing a modified version of this effect down the road. See, that's a thing, I'll take a moment to talk about that. That's a thing that I think that most marijuana users are kind of scared of. We don't, when I talk to people on the end, when they're all like, oh, they're going to synthesize marijuana for pharmaceutical purposes. Okay. I'm not necessarily for it, but I'm not exactly against it. But if we can take out the chemical compound that gets rid of anxiety and put it in a powder form and give it to somebody to where they don't have to get high and they have no negative side effects, why the hell not? Same with PTSD. If we found that it was CBDA, right, that was inspecific, that helped people control their PTSD and their attacks, why not extract it from the plant? Why not turn it into a pill? Why not do those things to give it to somebody? I mean, granted, we don't want the pharmaceutical industries, especially the standard model of it, to be involved in this, but this is what we're going for, right, guys? I mean, this is what medical cannabis is for. It's for the treatment of problems. Now, if you're a recreational user, sure, yeah, I can understand you not wanting to take something that wouldn't affect you in the way that you're looking for. But if you have a very specific problem, why not? Like myself with migraines, THCA, right? I eat that on the daily. I wake up every morning and I eat just a little tiny bit of it, just a little guy, right? And it helps. I have very little attacks. But that wouldn't happen if without the research and without the extraction process and isolating that particular compound. So I just wanted to point that out, guys, that we do need to support this kind of research. The results pair well with finding from research showing that marijuana compounds have a distinct effect on levels of a neurotransmitter, GABA, which plays a key role in the anxiety response. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that acts as a brake in anxiety, counterbalancing the effects of brain chemicals like glutamate. Early research suggests that compounds in marijuana, particularly CBD, enhance GABA's effect with moderate downsides. CBD has an impressive research profile in several areas, and anxiety is among them. Benzodiazepines, the most commonly used prescription for anxiety meds, also has a GABA, or also affects GABA levels. The meds are effective at quickly delivering what users are seeking, an anxiety extinguishing calmness. But that benefit comes at a cost. Tolerance to benzos including Xanax, Klonopin, builds up rapidly, requiring a user to take more and more of the meds to get the same effect. It doesn't take long to develop a dependency that may not end. Instead of going through the well-documented hell of getting off those meds, many users choose to stay on them indefinitely. In addition, benzo side effects are fatigue, disorientation, mental fogness, among others, and are notoriously difficult to manage while trying to make it through the day. Overdose potential for benzos are also very high, accounting for thousands of deaths in the U.S. every year. While preliminary, the latest research suggests that the compound in marijuana could eventually be harnessed to deliver anxiety relief with decreased dependency, fewer side effects, and less overdose potential. The early signs are very promising. But this, like all possibilities for future medical uses of marijuana compounds, depends on the research continuing. And that was from the latest study published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology. So, like the article says, it depends on more research. It depends on us making sure we're being truthful in our research. If someone comes to you and says marijuana THC has negative side effects, you don't tell them no, it doesn't. You tell them, well, yes, but when looking at the side effects for what we're replacing with medical marijuana, it is significantly better. And saying that there's no negative side effects to marijuana is like trying to say there's no negative side effects to drinking coffee or eating cookies. There are negative side effects if done outside of moderation and without proper knowledge. If you think that, just because I ate 1,000 cookies, I'm full now, that must mean I'm healthy and I'm getting all the nutrition I need, you would be wrong. That would not be all the nutrition you need. You got a bunch of empty calories and a whole bunch of sugar, and it's going to cause problems later. So the same with cannabis. And don't take this as like I'm talking schmack about cannabis. I love my cannabis, guys. It's just that we need to be honest. Weed. I really wanted to talk about the weed warrior women in the cannabis industry. This is something near and dear to my heart.
What number was that?
Number 9. This is something that's really near and dear to my heart. The women in the cannabis industry are something that I actually look for. I actually prefer to try and hire women because unlike other industries, women are making up more owners, more CEOs, more managers than almost any other industry in the U.S. So let me start here. Among the many benefits of marijuana legalization, from the influx of tax revenue to the reduced prison population, the emerging $7 billion market is providing new opportunities and fewer barriers than for enterprising women. As a product, cannabis crosses genders, ethnicities, economic backgrounds, and political views. It's a game changer. And here are 6 women who are advancing the cause of America's most intoxicating cash crop. And this was from Rolling Stone, by the way. You have the confectioner, Jenna Perez. Unlike many in the industry, Jenna got into the edible business through candy, not pot. She goes, I didn't actually have much of a relationship with cannabis, but I've always been passionate about the high-quality sweets. She had her own storefront selling handmade toffees in San Diego when Jetty Extracts, a large producer out of Oakland, approached her with the idea for a collaboration. They said, hey, do you want to put our oil in your toffee and make edibles? She recalls. A year later, her Mind Trick toffees are in nearly 200 dispensaries statewide. Being at the forefront of something like this, she says, as a woman, is unbelievable. The grower, her name is Johanna Mortz. In grow culture, notorious for its irresponsible cultivation practices, harmful chemicals, wastewater, and soil degradation, Johanna Mortz is pioneering a more ethical way to farm. As the co-founder of Polyculture Canyard, she oversees an operation of just 40 marijuana plants using only regenerative farming practices, employing living soil, dirt full of nutrient excreting microorganisms, also known as bioorganics, and companion planting and naturally fend off destructive pests, like using ladybugs and praying mantis. Not all cannabis is created equal, she says. People should ask questions about where their cannabis come from, because it's not all coming from a farm like mine. The investor. Sally Nichols, in 2014, was working in startups. She received a tip about a high growth potential in weed. I learned quickly that we imagine as the face of cannabis was only scratching the surface. I assumed maybe writers or artists were open to cannabis, but what I found is the banker down the street loved it more than anybody. Her company, Girl Ventures, backs 4 startups, and Nichols heads the distribution of California's Bloom Farms, a maker of high-end cannabis products. This industry is a unique opportunity for women, she says, but you still have to be great at what you do. The attorney, Ariel Clark. she says she's been around cannabis her entire life. Ariel Clark, whose law firm, Clark Nubit LLP, represents some of California's largest growers, distributors, and dispensaries. As an attorney, I've seen it all, from the heavy federal enforcement to the murky set of state laws, to now building for-profit businesses in the traditional corporate market. As the state rolls out with legalized recreational pot, she's also leading a push for more equitable enforcement guidelines. There's a history of criminalization of black and brown people around marijuana. We have the opportunity to influence what this industry looks like. There is also the recruiter, Sean Lee. As a cannabis policy and business lawyer, Charlene Title and her former colleague roommate Daniel Shoemaker, a fellow weed activist, became go-tos for the marijuana companies looking for new staff. People will always come to us asking for help hiring, especially if they were looking for women and people of color, says Title, who also drafted the recent Massachusetts legislation initiative. Now, as the THC staffing group, Title and Shoemaker are helping to shape the budding industry and what it will look like. I wasn't fighting any stereotypes, says Title, of transitioning from law to cannabis recruiting. I think there was a chance in the cannabis industry to grow and be successful based on your merit. The software designer, Pamela Headfield, a user experience designer for software companies, found out how life-changing medical marijuana can be when she discovered that low THC products can end debilitating migraines that she's been suffering her entire adult life. Her next epiphany came when she realized that telehealth apps she'd been designing with her husband could be better suited for weed than regular consultations. The result, Hello MD, has become an invaluable resource for patients trying to look for medical marijuana. From consultants with doctors to precise products or recommendations. We found that people like convenience, and obviously they like privacy. But now we're in the section that I like to call cached. Did we learn something today? I like to think we did. In today's episode, we had to use critical thinking to see past hit pieces. But we'd also have to admit that we're just scratching the surface with cannabis. And we also need it to be allowed to be researched. We learned that from what little research we have done, that it's possible that cannabis can replace pharmaceuticals, from painkillers to anti-anxiety medicine. Do you realize how much money the old guard will lose if that is in fact the case? If there is any actual evidence that someone has died from cannabis or been injured by cannabis, I'll be one of the first people to say something. I will be right here looking you in the eye going, holy crap, guys, it happened. But mainly it would be because I'm the one who would be shocked. But until that day, keep up on your research, stay calm, and remember the truth is on your side. We will always be honest here. We will always research the truth. Make sure that you join us on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon Pacific time, and also check me out on JRev Media. Help us achieve normalization through education. Thank you, and keep growing.